Good evening and welcome to the Kuhn Academy for this installment of AP Government, where we're building responsible voters one video at a time. All right, see if who the first kid to come to class tomorrow that can tell me why I started this lecture with that song. All right, so we're talking today about presidential appointments to the judiciary. All right. So basically, as you can see, the higher visibility of the court, because everybody pays attention to it and it's kind of in the limelight somewhat, demands the president put greater attention on the nomination of Supreme Court justices. All right, presidents can only appoint justices if a vacancy occurs, though. That's either if somebody dies, somebody resigns from office, or just decides to retire. Lately, it's mostly been retirements. Antonin Scalia's is the death that people weren't anticipating to kind of change things a little bit. All right, so this is kind of a high-profile process, but this also works for all judicial appointments, not just the Supreme Court. All right, first and foremost, presidents are going to pick judges from their own party. All right, now judges are supposed to be non-partisan. All right, once they become a federal judge on a lower court, they don't really have that party label anymore. But initially, they're usually picked from U.S. attorneys. And other lawyers and people working, for politicians and stuff like that. In fact, both of Bush's appointments worked for Reagan in their Justice Department. So your party past is usually a big factor. All right, so Republicans are going to appoint Republicans, Democrats are going to appoint Republicans. That's kind of a no-brainer. Okay. Next, we look at the judicial philosophy. Justices are going to be picked because they share the same ideology as the president. So a conservative president's going to look for a conservative judge. A liberal president's going to want a liberal judge. Okay, and then they're going to look at some of the bigger ticket issues and try to pick people that are going to side with their policy preferences. So, for example, a Republican president is going to be probably against fixing campaign finance and reforming that system, so they're going to pick a judge that's going to agree that campaign expenditures are free speech. All right. 3 and 4, these are things your book talks about. They're kind of new to the list, but I'll mention them here. Sometimes they're political rewards. The book gave the example of LBJ picking a longtime friend of his, Abe Fortas, who ended up not getting the nomination because of it was late in his presidency. But for lower court judges, definitely, this is kind of the spoils system. All right, if you support the party, you work for the party, you work in their Justice Department, or work as a lawyer, you're probably going to get appointed to some job in the judicial branch. But Supreme Court appointments aren't usually political rewards. There's more to it than that. And then also they're going to pick judges based on getting political support. So Reagan, for example, chose Sandra Day O'Connor because at the time in his campaign, he was trailing women by 20%, what we know as the gender gap. So to close the gender gap, he says, if there is a vacancy in the Supreme Court and I'm elected president, my first appointment will be a woman. So he picked Sandra Day O'Connor to be the first female Supreme Court justice to kind of try to get the support of women. Barack Obama picked 2 women for the Supreme Court, both Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, and both of them were picked to kind of repair some of that fallout from 2008 when he beat Hillary Clinton for the nomination, and women were feeling a little slighted that they didn't get the Hillary getting the nomination. Plus, by picking Sotomayor, that also shored up Hispanics for Obama. So there's usually some kind of electoral group that you are targeting when you make your appointments. Now, remember, on FRQs, all right, which you may see down the road on these, you're going to need some explanation. So you want to know these buzzwords, but you also want to be able to explain them and convey that to the reader as you are arguing why presidents select judges. All right, we'll put this as kind of a caveat here, a catch-all, which is race, gender, religion, and region. You can throw age into this as well. Okay, but presidents are going to try to balance the court out a little bit. So the book's going to refer to a black seat on the court. There's a Jewish seat on the court. Okay, we've recently added 3 women to the court, so there's definitely gender there as well. But this kind of fits as one demographic category. Okay, but we're trying to balance the court out and try to keep it looking like America. That's a phrase you'll hear sometimes as well. Now, with age, that can go in either direction. All right, President Bush picked John Roberts to be Chief Justice because he was young. He wanted a judge that was going to be there for a long time, that was going to keep his ideology present on the court for maybe even 30 years. All right, President Obama chose Merrick Garland. Here's your clue for the music. Chose Merrick Garland because he was old. All right, he's in his mid-60s. And Trevor Noah made a nice joke about this, but he said it's kind of sad this guy's getting picked because he's going to die faster. But Obama was trying to shore up to his opponents, the conservatives, that he was making an appointment that was not going to be on the court long term, 30, 40 years, but somebody that was older, more experienced, and possibly one that wouldn't be around for a long time and throw off the balance. Okay. We also look for experience. All right. We're looking for people who've been judges before in district courts, courts of appeals, sometimes state courts, but it's not a requirement. Earl Warren, the Chief Justice we'll hear more about, he was governor of California when he was appointed. John Roberts was working in the Justice Department. So you don't have to be a lawyer, but a judge, but definitely some law experience helps. All right. And there are no constitutional requirements whatsoever for these. All right. Finally, last two, here's litmus test. This is going to be our word wall, so if you want 5 extra points on your note cards, be the first to get litmus test on the word wall. You know this from science, but this is basically where a president will look at a certain issue. Lately, it's been abortion. See what the nominee's position is on that one issue. If they agree with the president, they've passed the litmus test, and then they will consider them. It was used with slavery in the 1800s when Democrats were appointing Supreme Court judges, but usually it's on controversial issues like campaign finance, gun control, abortion, stuff like that. Every president will say they're not using a litmus test, but usually they're going to pick somebody that agrees with them on those critical issues. Okay? And then finally is acceptability. You want to pick somebody that is not controversial and something that the Senate Judiciary Committee will accept, because you're going to see that those hearings are really high profile and draw a lot of media attention. So the Judiciary Committee will do a hearing first and then approve the nominee, and then obviously need the whole entire Senate to approve them as well. All right. You also want to be accepted by the ABA. That's called the American Bar Association, and they rate the judges, well qualified, qualified, and not qualified. They rate every judge. They're not required to, but they do. And lately, Republican presidents have said that that's not essential, because Clarence Thomas, one who we'll talk about in class, was given a not qualified rating. So since then, Republican presidents have said they're not going to go by the ABA ratings, even though the ABA still rates them. But you obviously want to pick somebody that's going to get a well-qualified rating from an interest group that represents lawyers. And then finally, the role of interest groups in the confirmation process. You want to make sure that there's not going to be a big charge against you if you nominate somebody that's controversial. Robert Bork is the most noted controversial nominee. Interest groups like women, like Now with Women and then NAACP, they formed a coalition to work to defeat his nomination because they felt he was a threat to civil rights and reproductive rights and things like that. So you want to make sure you're not going to have interest groups leading the charge against your nominee. All right, so thank you for listening to this installment of the Kuhn Academy, where we're building responsible voters one video at a time. All right, and we'll see you tomorrow in class. Once in a lullaby.